All right, everybody. Good morning. We are back here with another YouTube Live. I'm drinking coffee. Let me know what you were drinking in the comments or the chat. We're going to do a Q&A. I just sent an email out and got some cool questions back. So I want to spend some time answering those questions for you. We have questions on supplements. We have questions on stress, fat loss, philosophy books, lots of good stuff. I will try to make this somewhat rapid fire. And yeah, well, without any delay, why don't we get right in? If all works out scheduling wise, I would like to try to set a regular time to do these live streams. I know I've been somewhat unpredictable here, and this is early. This is an odd time to do a live stream. But thanks for joining me. For those of you who tuned in, please like the video. Please share it. Hopefully, it will give you some good stuff to ponder, to think about, to work on, to rock and roll with. I hear a baby. I hear a baby in the background. By the way, you notice a change of scenery. I'm just in a different room in my house. That's how it goes. Okay, first question comes from David, and these questions mostly come from email. A few of them I grabbed from social media as well. If you're not on my email list, please do. Go over to 101kettlebellworkouts.com. You'll get a big fat course PDF of 101 kettlebell workouts, totally free. And then you'll get on my email list and everything will be sweet. So David says, any stress management supplement recommendations would be appreciated. Also, any tips for how to get rid of these love handles, LOL. Yeah, so I do have some supplement recommendations for you. Life is stressful. What is life if not a ball of stress, especially this year, 2020? My goodness, what a roller coaster it has been. So when it comes to stress, first off, let's take a step back. When it comes to supplementation, it's important to avoid the kind of too extreme attitudes that you hear about supplementation online. The first attitude is that supplements are completely worthless, that you might as well just take your money and flush it down the toilet. That's not true. There's been a lot of research, a lot of good research done on supplementation. So they're definitely not worthless, at least not all supplements. The other attitude is that supplements can compensate for everything else. That supplements are the end all, be all. And that's obviously grossly misleading as well. Supplements really mean in addition to. So supplements should never be something that you think are going to replace an otherwise healthy lifestyle. You can't out supplement a bad diet. You can't, supplement your way to getting stronger and more muscular if you're not actually lifting weight. So supplements can be those things that can, give you that marginal benefit when you already have a lot of the fundamentals in place. And this is true when it comes to strength and performance. It's true when it comes to fat loss. There's not really many great fat loss supplements out there. In fact, I think what I'm going to recommend here might be the best, because for stress related stuff, there's an indirect benefit. If you get stressed down and you start sleeping better and you have more energy, then things like fat loss come easier. So for you, David, I think these things will connect. If you're kind of struggling with stubborn body fat, one of the best things you can do is just make sure that you're living a less stressful lifestyle. And this is pretty common sense, right? We know that when we are very stressed, we don't sleep well, we're tired, we don't think well, we don't perform well. So there's sort of an indirect benefit to be had from getting stress under control for performance and fat loss. So let's get into it. For stress, I would highly recommend looking into certain adaptogens. Adaptogens are those types of herbs that really help your body cope with stress, to better handle the stress of stress, if you will. So I'm going to recommend two different ones that I take personally. The first one is this. I know that this shows up backwards on YouTube. So this is the brand Gaia. From what I can tell, they're a very reputable brand. Nobody's paying me anything to recommend stuff here. This is literally from my supplement shelf. And this is ashwagandha. So ashwagandha has been really well studied. You can look up the research on this. Has been shown to really help with not just stress, but anxiety. There's some evidence, some slight evidence that might help with performance and men with testosterone as well, but definitely substantial evidence for helping to reduce stress, reduce anxiety, and promote overall well-being. So I would definitely recommend a basic ashwagandha supplement. I think this is one of those supplements that has a ton of upside and virtually no downside, and it's not that expensive either. So sometimes I just take just the recommended dosage of this, and I always notice a difference when I'm taking versus when I'm not taking ashwagandha. It definitely helps. Other times I take a blend. Here's one I've been taking recently that I think is pretty cool. It's called Stress Guard by Wild Harvest. And this has ashwagandha in it. It also has some other adaptogens like holy basil and I think rhodiola, maybe. I'm sorry. What I need is a supplement for my eyesight. That's what I really need. Yeah. There's theanine in here too. Theanine is another good supplement to take. It especially mixes well with caffeine because it can kind of take the jitters away from caffeine, help you focus a little bit better. Again, a useful supplement for stress, anxiety, general nervousness, and stuff like that. So I like this. So I would say adaptogens that are worth looking into or considering for stress: ashwagandha, rhodiola, holy basil. I used to take bacopa. Bacopa was pretty good. I haven't taken that in a while. So I would look into that. And these are the two ones that I'm currently taking, and I would recommend them both. But if it comes to stress, don't forget the basics. Make sure you're exercising, resistance training and cardio. Make sure you're getting to bed, at a reasonable hour. I'd say within, or before maybe like 10 p.m. Don't stew yourself in a bunch of blue light. Have some way to calm yourself down, whatever that is. Turn off social media every now and then. So good stuff. And good morning once again, YouTube. So cool to be here. Thanks for the likes and whatnot. All right, let's keep going through here. Mika says, Pat, could you please do a quick overview of the books you've written and in what order you'd recommend reading them? Why, of course, if you're going to ask about my books, of course, I'm going to pick your question. There's nothing I'd rather talk about, nothing more I'd rather talk about. Let's see if I have them all here. I tried to prepare a little bit for this morning. I'm not big on doing prep before live streams and podcasts, but here's my first book. The book that Dan John says is a terrific book with a terrible title. Hey, I'll take it. Paleo Workouts for Dummies. Short story on this book. Wiley, who owns the For Dummies brand, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the For Dummies brand. When they contracted me to write this book, I accepted under the understanding that I would write a book on kettlebells, minimalist strength training, and nutrition. It happened to be at the height of the paleo craze, so they were insistent on putting paleo in the title. But paleo it's neither here nor there, really, when it comes to this book. This is my book on kettlebell, minimalist kettlebell and bodyweight strength training. There is some good nutrition stuff in here, lots of cool tutorials on exercises. So I really focused on breaking down the movements. There's me doing the old muscle up, breaking down the exercises, really helping people to understand the fundamentals of, again, basic techniques. Maybe you can see there's some deadlifts. So good photos, point by point checklist for what to look for in terms of technique. It's nice because this is kind of an older book now. I think this came out in 2012, 2013. And I looked through it and I don't completely want to throw up on the floor. And that makes me very happy because that's not always the case when you read something of yours that you wrote even 5 minutes ago. So this would probably be the first one to start with. My second book is called Fast Diets for Dummies. I know, another terrible title. Quick story. I said to the publisher, why don't we call it Intermittent Fasting for Dummies? Doesn't that make sense? And they said, no, that's too complicated. Then I said, well, how about we call it Fasting for Dummies? Doesn't that make sense? And they said, no, that sounds too religious. And I was like, okay, fine. What do you want to call it? And they said Fast Diets for Dummies. So I don't know what to say about that, except for this is all about intermittent fasting. It's sort of an overview of intermittent fasting. So I look at the research. I talk about the benefits, the practicality, and then try to give some ways of getting started. So I look at like the 5-2 approach, the eating window approach, the controlled fasting approach. So it's just kind of a 10,000-foot view of intermittent fasting, but then give some specific plans as well. So that's more on the nutrition side. I have a third book that I don't physically have with me right now. That's actually a combination of these two books. Despite their terrible titles, these have sold well. And Wiley wanted to do a sort of I don't know, a collection of a compilation, I should say, of these two books plus a third book I didn't write, and that's called Paleo All-in-One for Dummies. And you could grab that, I guess, if you wanted. I forget that that's even one of my books most of the time. Okay, changing gears somewhat. My most recent published book is this one, How to Be Better at Almost Everything. And this is just the idea of being a generalist, that you're generally going to be better off getting good to great at a variety of different skills, and then stacking your skills to form competitive and creative advantages in life, rather than worrying about being the best in the world at any one thing. So this is a book about skill development. I talk about developing meta skills such as logic and fitness and self-discipline and stuff like that. And I approach learning from, I think, a pretty systematic way. So this is for anybody who wants to be better at pretty much anything, or at least fairly competent at a broad range of skills. Entrepreneurs, business owners, I think you'll find this especially useful. But there's a lot of good fitness stuff in here too. I have a 2-page fitness plan, like very minimalist, that I think you'll find helpful in here. So it's got a really cool green cover. And here's the paperback version as well. Most recently, for you philosophy nerds, I have this. This is just a quick proof. This really comes in ebook called How to Think About God. And this is just a little thing I put together for people who are interested in natural theology. Natural theology is just is a sort of branch or subset of metaphysics, where we're just trying really to see how far reason can go in trying to understand fundamental reality. So I took some stuff that I wrote in my master's program, tried to polish it up, put it together, and now it's a $1 ebook on Amazon. I don't actually have print copies available yet. Like I said, this is just a test run, but hopefully I'll make a print version soon. But it's $1. So if you're interested in philosophy, you might enjoy that as well. It's right on Amazon. So those are my books. What order to take them in depends on what topic you're interested in. I would say for the fitness one, you could just start with the Paleo Workouts for Dummies. This is its own beast, and this is its own beast. So they're not really logically connected, but there you go. Okay, next question is from James. Oh, and I see some other nice. Do I hear a baby here? Hey, Sabrina, how are you? Thanks for those tuning in here on the live chat. Good to hear from you. I'll try and get to the live chat questions here in just a minute, guys. So please keep putting those in. Tyler, what is going on? I want to run through some of these more questions I have from email first. This is fun, though. I like this stuff. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in again, and please, like the video and all that. James says, for someone getting interested in philosophy, what book should I start with? This is probably the most common question, next to how do I lose 10 to 15 pounds. We have a special guest coming in. Hold on, everybody. We did show and tell yesterday, so we have to do it again today. Here's Marin. Hi. Hello. Can you say hello? Can you say hi? Yeah. Hi. Yeah, wave to mom. Oh. She's trying to sabotage. Okay, here we go. Thanks for stopping by. This is number 4, I think. 4? Yeah, 4. Yeah, she wants the mics. That's a little. She's wearing, I think, her older brother's former pajamas. What a treat! Always good to have special guests on the podcast. Okay, so James, tips for getting started in philosophy. Like I said, this is one of the most common questions I get on Instagram. I actually did an Instagram live with my friend Leah not too long ago. We did a whole intro to philosophy. Let me say this: philosophy is a huge discipline with many different branches. I mean, philosophy has logic, it has philosophy of science, it has ethics, it has metaphysics. So where you should start is going to depend in part on what really interests you. I think a good philosopher should be a generalist. You should have familiarity with all the branches, at least somewhat, or at least most of them. But you'll kind of have your areas of specialization. For me, that's been metaphysics. So let me just offer a few starting points. One, if you really want to enter the philosophical conversation, you have to read the original thinkers and the primary text. So you have to read Plato, you have to read Aristotle, you have to read Boethius, you have to read Augustine, you have to read Aquinas, you have to read Leibniz, you have to read Kant, you have to read Descartes, you have to read Hume, you have to read all these guys, right? The classic medieval, contemporary, modern, even postmodern philosophers, right? And you just have to read them directly. So aside from that, here's a nice compendium I have of modern philosophy. If you just want a collection of writings from modern philosophers, this one's nice, and this is just an anthology of primary sources. So maybe you'd be interested in that. In terms of books to start with, let me just recommend a few here. For logic, I've mentioned this one before. It's called Socratic Logic by Peter Kreeft. Like I said, logic is a branch of philosophy, and it studies the structure of thought. I've done a number of podcasts on logic before, so maybe we'll link those in the show notes afterwards. Here's a nice book to start kind of entering into the great philosophical conversation, if you will. It's called 10 Philosophical Mistakes by Mortimer J. Adler. If you're on the live stream yesterday, you'll remember that I recommended one of his other books called How to Read a Book. This is great because he traces certain lines of thought in modern thinkers, like, for example, John Locke and Kant, where he thinks they actually go wrong. So he'll introduce you to some very important philosophical schools of thought while critiquing them. So that's a cool book, and it will. I think that's an interesting one to start with, to just kind of get a lay of the land somewhat. And what Adler ultimately argues is that the true philosophy, the perennial philosophy, if you will, is going back to those that essentially like a big tent Platonism. And I would argue that from Plato up to Aquinas. Aquinas is kind of the acme of Platonic thought. Some people say that Aquinas was, one of the first great medieval philosophers, but I've also heard it said that Aquinas was the last great classical philosopher. I'm actually more inclined to that latter position. Let me also recommend this. If you're interested in ethics, which I think you should be, my friend Brian Masong has a great book called Introduction to Ethics. He's been on my podcast before. He's going to be coming on again next week to talk asceticism. He's going to make a philosophical case for asceticism and how that applies to fitness and nutrition. So he's got a great book on ethics. Smart dude, good dude. Check him out. Okay, so there's some starting points for you. Okay. Sabrina, what are you drinking? I have coffee straight from Mr. Coffee. Thank you. Okay, Sabrina, let's take your question. In terms of fat loss, does it really matter if you're a high carb and low fat, 10% fat or less, or high fat and low carb? Won't dietary fat, if not used for energy, be stored as fat in the body? Good question. The best research we have really says no on that. It doesn't really matter too much what your macro distribution is in terms of carbohydrate or fat content, so long as calories are controlled, right? So calories are controlled. Calories are the master variable. So we have lots of studies that compare, more or less carb intake, but then keep calories fixed. And what we find is not really much of a difference. That you can have success with fat loss on a higher carb diet. You can have success with fat loss on a lower carb diet. Now, at the same time, I don't want to say that lower carb diets don't have certain unique benefits. So good evidence-based coaching looks at the research. We say, okay, well, what does research tell us? But also looks at, practical experience with clients and even personal experience. So anecdotal evidence is still some evidence. It shouldn't outweigh all the other evidence and the research, but it's something we want to keep in consideration. What do I mean by that? I just have certain clients that do a lot better on lower carb diets. Their satiety is higher. Their energy is better. They're able to make better food decisions. So when carbs are lower for them, they have an easier time controlling calories. So some people will say it doesn't matter at all. I would say generally we have to keep in mind the things that matter most, which of course would be caloric control. And also protein intake. Protein intake is another hinge factor in the research. Getting protein up results in good things in terms of fat loss. But then we also have to pay attention to individual preferences. People are different. And I also have other clients that do better on a higher carb diet. So for a coach, it's just a matter of keeping different tools in your kit. and reflecting on the client's experience and your experience in light of the overall research. So that's the most honest assessment I can give you. As far as dietary fat being stored or carbohydrates being stored, again, not a huge issue in the grand scheme, because it's ultimately going to come down to whether you're taking in or putting out more or less calories. So yeah, that's a good question. It's an important question. It's one that people get tripped up on, and my answer is from the best research. You can have success higher carb or lower carb. And with that being said, once you understand that and you don't become like a low carb zealot or a high carb zealot, you can then just take into account practical considerations, client preferences, personal preferences if it's for you, and see what works best for you. I personally do better lower carb than higher carb. I know for me, if I start increasing my carb intake, I just start getting more hungry overall. I just eat more overall. So I have a moderately low carb diet myself. I also do better when I fast. That's not the case for everybody. And that helps me to make sure I'm hitting my calorie targets, for example. So that's a good question. Thanks for that, Sabrina. Okay, let's go back to the document here. Michael says, do an EVH tribute on the guitar. I think the best tribute I could give Eddie Van Halen, God rest him, is actually not to do an EVH tribute on the guitar. I haven't played a Van Halen tune in a long time, my friends. A lot of Van Halen in high school, so I'd be really rusty with my EVH on the fretboard. He's a hard guy to learn. He's not, because you really have to use your ear, and he's so quirky on the fretboard that to really nail Van Halen is just, he's so erratic. And the way he kind of just like falls down certain patterns and scales, he's very difficult to rein in. I've never quite got Van Halen right. I'm not sure if anybody's ever. No, there's some people out there that can actually really nail Van Halen well. I've never been. I'm more of a structured guy. I like things kind of, if we can notate them really nicely. Van Halen is he's hard to get on paper. He really is. Which is a good challenge if you're a musician, because you really have to slow things down. You have to use your ear. You have to play with a lot of intuition and feel. And that's a good challenge. So unfortunately, I don't have any Van Halen learned. I don't even have my guitar by me. But what a sad day yesterday to see him go. The king is dead. God rest his soul. Every guitarist remembers the first time they heard Eruption. I certainly do. Okay. Username from a language I don't understand or speak, but thanks for tuning in. What's your view on intermittent fasting and how best to start it? So we just covered one of my books on intermittent fasting. Here's the deal on intermittent fasting research. I'm about to put out an ebook on intermittent fasting 101. At worst, the best sort of review of the research says that intermittent fasting, at worst, seems to be as effective as traditional forms of calorie control. What does that mean? Well, it means that if you're looking at, reining in your nutrition and you want to lose some weight, you're not any worse off going with intermittent fasting than the traditional forms of calorie control. And there may be some unique benefits as well. There was a study published in Cell Metabolism which shows that intermittent fasting has unique benefits for health, for inflammatory response and stuff like that, irrespective of weight loss. And that's important because for a while, people thought that all the health benefits from intermittent fasting were just a result of weight loss. But the study in Cell Metabolism challenges that and says, no, irrespective of weight loss, intermittent fasting seems to have some pretty interesting and worthwhile health benefits. What's the best way to get started? I really like the 5-2 approach. It was popular a couple of years ago. It's very practical, 2 days a week. Skip breakfast. So have your first meal maybe around 11 or noon. So you're really just extending the fast that you start when you're sleeping. So it's not too intense. It's not too long of a duration, but you're gonna knock a decent chunk of calories out of your budget every week, and that will make a difference. And then with 5-2, what you then do is you have kind of 2 smaller meals on those days. So maybe it's Wednesday and Friday. So on Wednesday and Friday, you skip breakfast. You have a sort of lighter lunch, say a soup or a salad or something like that. And then you have, maybe a lighter dinner as well. some protein, some vegetables, stuff like that. And then the rest of your week, you can keep that pretty much normal, clean eating. Everybody knows what we mean by clean eating. Have quality proteins, have healthy fats, complex carbs, depending on what macros you're shooting for, colorful vegetables, and drink lots of water and stuff like that. So I think that is the easiest way to start. Other people, and what I talk about in my fasting book, like the eating window approach, which like the 16-8 approach, you fast for 16 hours and you have an eating window of 8 hours, and that's where you get all your calories in. That's fine too. That's a good starting approach. I think either of those two are good ways to, just get started with intermittent fasting. Don't complicate it. Keep it simple. Alex, what's up? Pat, you are such an intelligent and well-read man, but you use Facebook for strong on members. Bearing in mind what Facebook is doing to American democracy, why do you use it? With respect, Alex, I try to be well-read. I really do. But I don't know a lot of things. I don't really know everything that Facebook is up to. I try not to spend a lot of time on social media. What I know is that my little Facebook Strong On group is a highlight of my day and a day for many members. I constantly tell people to spend less time on social media. I try to do that myself, not just for the concerns that you brought up, but for your own mental health. I think people talk about fasting. I think an important thing people should consider are technology fasts, unplugging from social media, stuff like that. So the online community, the group format in Facebook has been very helpful for bringing, we have like 6,000 to 7,000 members in there. It's very active. And Alex, if you're part of that group, I'm sure you see that it's a really positive community, right? The culture is fantastic. People are incredibly supportive. For me, it's a thoroughgoing asset. And so I'm going to continue to use that. And I do try to restrict most of my time on social media to just paying attention to what's going on in that group, supporting my members. And then, so I don't know. I don't have too many established positions on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, except for people would benefit from spending far less time on those platforms than they currently do, myself included. So I'll have to think more about some of the other stuff that you're saying. Julie says, love that technology fasts. What's up, Julie? I think technology fasts are a very wise and smart idea. So should definitely do it. Okay, let's take in, I have many more questions in the bank here, but we'll save these for another live stream because this is cool, but we'll have to wrap it up here. Alex, Pat, I really appreciate your answer and respect you tremendously. Thank you, good sir. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. That means a lot. All right, let's take one more. This one comes from Josh. How do you feel about using weighted vests as a means of adding weight to pull-ups, push-ups, etc., and other body weight exercises? Short answer, love them. Love weighted vests. They're a great tool. There's one, so for push-ups, fantastic. For dips, really good. One area or one exercise where I sometimes have an issue, and it depends on the vest, are pull-ups, because it can sometimes gets a little crowded with the shoulders. So when it comes to pull-ups, or chin-ups, I'll typically use a belt, and then I'll tie a weight around the belt just to make sure the shoulder mechanics are okay. But that, again, really depends on the vest, and I've seen some vests where there's plenty of room for the shoulders to move through, a normal range of motion. But other than that, I think it's a fantastic training tool. I've used vests for a long time in my training to help with the body weight exercises, dips, pull-ups, push-ups, one-arm push-ups, handstand push-ups. You can see a video on this YouTube channel where I'm doing weighted handstand push-ups with my buddy Alex, and really helped for the handstand push-ups for getting my strength up there, because I had plateaued for a while. So bringing in the weighted vest and kind of pushing an overload really helped me to break through that sticking point. So would recommend. Definitely a useful training tool. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. I hope this is helpful. We'll try to get more of these live streams on the schedule, on the reg, as they say. So do me a favor. If you like this, please like this video. The likes help. Please comment. Let me know what your thoughts and questions are for future videos. Please share. Please subscribe. Please ring the little bell. What other things can I ask you for? I think that's 5 things is enough, right? Like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the little bell. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and goodbye.